everybody, we are we're gonna get started. I think what is it? I'm just checking my Zoom. We have we're gonna have about 446 people attend today's session, right? That is pretty awesome, Karen. 446 people, almost 500. Wow, I'm kind of like excited, to have this. And our topic today is a very good one. It's very timely. Is like, how do we have difficult conversations with whether it's your clinician or your front desk that actually inspires them to take action without them leaving you, right? I think that's always been kind of that challenge that we have, like as owners. And so, would you agree, Karen?
Oh, totally. I think we kind of want to look the other way or avoid it because we're just so afraid of losing a staff, because it's hard. It's hard to lose a staff member. So yeah, no, I've been there for sure.
Yeah. Who's lost a staff member in the last 30 days? Type in 30 in the chat. If you lost a staff member in the last 30 days, type 30 in the chat. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm about to. Okay. Yeah. We should, and just before we get started, everyone, like as you, I want everyone to see, I want this to be an interactive chat, everyone. And so as you type in, there's a setting in Zoom where you could change your chat. So it goes all panelists and attendees. So I want you to be able to like change the setting so everyone could see, see that. If let's do this exercise now. Type in chat in the Zoom chat and change it to all panelist attendees, everyone. Okay, so everyone can see everyone's results, right? Is that cool? All right, good. Because I want this interactive. I want this like to be awesome. And then also the other good reason why I do that is that at the end of this is that like we're gonna give out an iPhone, right? Who wants to win an? So not iPhone. You're gonna win an iWatch. Who wants to win an iWatch? Type in like watch in the chat. And that's why I want this to be like super interactive, super engaging. And if you stay till the very end, we're gonna give out like we're gonna spin the wheel. And give out an iWatch. Yeah, we're gonna spin a wheel and it's gonna be super cool. I love giving out iWatches. Who doesn't want to see it till the end, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And so that's what we're gonna do. And just I want to do a shout out to our community partners. This event was possible because we got amazing community partners. And so I just want to do a shout out to them. They did some amazing things. So we got, Karim with like the PPT, Canadian Physiotherapy Association Private Practice. Type in PPD to give some love to Karim and the PPD. Like they're doing amazing things for the community. So type in PPD in the chat. And then our good friends from Clinic Master, Max and them, and if you're using like Clinic Master, type in Clinic Master in the chat, and Karen, I think you use Clinic Master, right? Am I right?
We do. We use Clinic Master.
Okay. That's yeah. They've been kind of the pioneers back 10, 15 years ago, right? So and then the third thing is our community partners from Practice Promotions. Type in Practice Promotions in the chat if you actually use them. Like they're kind of like a full service solution with creating websites. And Karen, I think at one point within your journey, you use Practice Promotions as well, right?
Yeah, they're a great company. I started with them probably 10 years ago. Still using them to some capacity. They're a really good company.
Okay, cool. Awesome. So we're gonna get started. I want to jump into this. So we're gonna make this chat super interactive. I want to find out what is your role, everyone? Type in the chat. Are you a clinic owner? Are you a clinic director? Are you a front desk? Are you a clinician? Like, what is your role, right? Are you office manager, right? Are you a regional manager? So Karen, what do you see in the chat?
A lot of owners. Yes.
Wow, look at Tara. Tara's everything. Tara, that one's into it. Tara's like, I am a clinic owner. I am a front desk. I am a clinician.
I remember those days. That's how I started in 2004. I was owner, physio, trainer, plumber, bookkeeper, receptionist.
Yeah, that is awesome, right? And so that is amazing. That's good. You know, I think a lot of us kind of go through that journey, especially when we start off a clinic from scratch. And once we hit kind of that $500,000 mark, we have a little more people. We start having an org structure, taking our hats off, having roles, and then that's when we grow to a $1 million, $2 million, $5 million business, right? So, everyone, I am super excited on this episode of like New Patient Secrets to have Karen Craven here. And so I'm going to do I'm going to get Karen Craven to maybe share her story. And I've been working with Karen for the past, like, you know, almost, how long has it been, Karen? You know, like maybe 6-7 years, you know, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, 6-7 years. We started journeying, and she's a co-owner of an amazing clinic in Saskatchewan. So Karen, why don't you kind of like quickly share your story, and why, like, you are our leadership coach within Clinic Accelerator, you know, and what you kind of do. So cool.
Awesome. Thanks, Rick. Yeah, I was a clinic owner in 2004. I started then. It'll be 17 years. So I'm a co-owner of Craven Sports Services. We're an interdisciplinary clinic with physio, massage, dietitian, doctor, psychologist training, kind of multifaceted. So I kind of wore all those hats in the beginning for a long time, and then grew quite quickly where it just wasn't possible. So at some point, the other owner and myself, Bruce, we made the decision, one of us needed to run this business and one of us needed to stay as a clinician. So he was certainly more valuable in his role as a clinician. So I took on the role of managing and running a clinic, of which I knew nothing, which most of us don't. So I sought out further education and read and everything I could possibly read to learn how to do that, which was good. And that helped a lot. And then I got to the point where it was just so crazy and busy that I think the conversation I had with you, Rick, initially was, if somebody offered me $2 for my business, I would sell it, because it was so chaotic and I just couldn't handle it. So, I mean, if you can relate to that, type chaos in the chat, because I know most people can. And that's when I started to get things turned around. And interesting with that picture there, that's in Victoria. And this was at a point where I had really turned things around such that I worked myself almost out of a job. And I had coffee with Rick, and I said to him, Rick, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing now. Like, I have this extra time. What am I supposed to do? And he's like, well, that's where you're supposed to be right now. Now you have more space and capacity to work on the business, to think about the business, to do other things that you like. And one of the things I've always wanted to do is give back to clinic owners, to really help them, you know, make the journey a little bit easier than what I had it. And the areas that I've really developed into and really love about owning a business is leadership and communication. So that's most of my studying right now, is in those areas. So that's kind of what's brought me to this point. And everything I talk about, I would say I'll practice on my staff, but I practice on my kids, I practice on my staff, I use it, you know, in my personal life, and I use it in my business life. So it's a great thing to learn how to do.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And Karen is one of our leadership coaches within Clinic Accelerator. And we're going to actually share with you like what we do inside. So it's going to be raw. You're going to see exactly how we work with our community. And I want you to type in the chat, maybe describe in like one sentence very quickly. Can you describe the last type of describe the last like the type of difficult conversation you had with the staff recently? Type that in the chat, you know. So type in the chat what describe very quickly what is the last type of conversation you had, difficult conversation with the staff. It could be about like maybe it's raising your pay, maybe it's like about performance review, maybe it's like vaccine passports, maybe it's like about vaccination. So I just want to curious like what type of conversation you're having. Karen, maybe as people type in, like, is there a recent difficult conversation you had recently?
Yeah, I think it's kind of, this was an interesting one because it ended up with the outcome that I wanted. So my manager of operations in the clinic was having a really hard time with one of the admin, just not getting her to do what she's supposed to do. And she couldn't figure out why she wasn't doing it. And so she met with me, I gave her some suggestions. She met with her, still wasn't happening. And at that point in time, and this is key, normally as owners, we want to jump in and just fix it. Fine, I'll just take care of it. But I didn't. I said, I want you to go back one more time And I want you to find the why underneath the why she's not kind of using her admin time as appropriate. So she went back again and she worked hard and she figured it out and she did it. And she got to the why, under the why, and came up with a collaborative solution for this admin person. It was awesome. But it took her 3 times to have that difficult conversation with some coaching, but she got there. That's a huge win, because the win is that I didn't have to step in. I could coach somebody and she did it. And now moving forward, she's going to find it a lot easier to have those conversations.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, I that totally, and Karen, if you look in the chat, like, you know, like look at some of the conversations that are being had right now. Is there anything that kind of like stands out to you, or?
Oh, the productivity, you know, toxic, you know, trash talking, lack of engagement, not leading, not communicating, delegation, that's a big one, task delegation.
How to bring in additional staff, you know, like that's you know, without your like, without the old guard getting upset because there's not enough new patients to be delegated, right? You know, right?
Yeah, everything's so common. I've probably dealt with all of it. So I totally get where everybody's coming from.
There's a whole section just on HR, right? You know,
it is. Yeah, we essentially are doing HR without really having any training in it. So
yes, and then that brings up a good point, everyone. So today's webinar, we are actually going to be talking about you know, what we're going to be talking about one of the challenges that we do inside our clinic accelerator community. Like, you know, we work with like over 375 clinics right now, and Karen actually runs our challenge on you know, how to have difficult conversations. You know, it's like this 4-week challenge, and we're gonna go through week 1 with you, right, Karen? Is that kind of the?
Yeah, I'm gonna give you a snippet of week 1 without giving away everything.
Okay, who's excited for week 1? Type in week 1. Like, there's like, you know, type in week 1 in the chat if you're excited to go through week 1 of our 4-week 30-day challenge, right? Awesome. That's cool. And lastly is that everyone, like, you know, the way we built Clinic Accelerator is that, like, you know, it's designed to train your team. So whether training the owner or training your clinic director or training your office manager or training your marketing coordinator, like, you know, like that's kind of what we do, you know. And so let's just kind of jump into it, Karen.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to run this like I would normally do in the challenge. And I want to really start with, and I start every week with this, that you get what you give. So what you put into things is what you get out of them. So invest in yourself in this next hour. And I promise you, if you take it away and then start to use it in your own practice, you will start to see some results and get the outcome you're looking for. So we really start off talking about communication, really defining it. What are the components of it? What does it look like, sound like? How do you get outcomes you want? One of the things we do in the challenge is we assign homework, and I believe everything starts with you. So in the week 1, you actually do a self-evaluation form, which really gives you a good insight into where you are at as far as your communication skills. So we always do a little bit of homework, which I'll give a little bit of a hint at the end, but I'm going to save that for the challenge as well. So let's get into it. What is the actual definition of communication? I think it's really important to define words. So if we look at the definition of this, it's really the imparting or exchanging of information or news. The second definition is the means of sending or receiving information. So just type into the chat, what is the one key word that stands out to you with communication? So type in the chat if within those definitions is a keyword. Bingo. Exchange. So it's not one way. It's not you going this, and this. It's an actual exchange of information. So think about that right now where you're at. What is your style of communication? Do you just tell people, do this, or do you actually have an exchange of dialogue between that person?
Actually, you know, that's a good one. Type in the chat, like, what type of leadership style are you having right now with your leadership team? You know, do you, is it like, what are the 2 words you want them to type in, Karen? You know?
Well, I'd like them to type in exchange. And I'd like to,
or do you tell them what to do, right? You know?
So you can type exchange or tell them what to do.
Yeah.
coaching. And I think that, it used to be managing. We managed our people, right? But now I think it's really turned to more coaching. We're really trying to coach people and to be better versions of themselves in their workplace, but also their personal lives. So when I did the research on this, the survey showed that up to 80% of everything communicated by human beings is misunderstood. 80%. Does that surprise people? Type in yes or no if that surprises you.
Wow, really?
Now I really want you to think about that. If you really think about those conversations or why people aren't doing, what you think they should be doing, think about if they actually understand. Okay.
Yeah.
So if we look at communication, and understanding, there's 3 parts to it. And this was one of the first courses that I took. And I've used, when did I take this? 2011, 10. I use this all the time, even with onboarding. I talk about ARC, A-R-C, which stands for Affinity, Reality, and Communication. So we talk about the ARC concept a lot. And all 3 of those are clear. Affinity, you've got something that you like about the person or something good that you can share. The reality of, myself and Rick are the same. We're both talking the same reality and we're communicating back and forth about that. Then we have an understanding of what we're doing, which is what we did before we jumped on this call. We had affinity for each other. His reality was mine. Check. We communicated about it.
Madonna. We both like Madonna, right?
Right. And so we were a clear understanding of how this webinar was going to go, right? If one of those things is off, where my reality was not the same as Rick's, or we didn't talk about it before, then my understanding may not be the same as his. And then we have a breakdown in communication. We're not going to get the results that we want. So if you look at any one of these things, even, you could apply this to your physios and patient relationships. You can apply this to your front desk relationships. So this is really key, I believe, to getting that understanding so that people are all on the same page, essentially, is the ARC principle. And I use this a lot in the challenge. So that's a key component. And then if we look at the components of communication themselves, what are they? The first one is be present. You've got to show up with the right mindset. Now, just type into the chat, how many of you rush into a meeting, you got a staff member that you're going to meet with, and you're doing, for 25 things, and you rush into the meeting to meet with the staff member, and it ends up being a difficult conversation. Type into the chat, rush, if that's usually how you approach meetings.
So Karen, a good example is like after you see a patient, you rush into the next room to have a difficult conversation, right? Like during lunch, right?
Yeah. Are you going to be in the right mindset? Or if you just had a difficult conversation with one staff and then you're going into another meeting. So you have to show up with the right mindset. And we'll talk a bit about what that looks like. The second is the unspoken communication, which is your listening and your body language. And the third is spoken, and that's your words and tone. And if we look at, and I really believe mindset is the key to everything. So if we look at mindset, we want to go in with a collaborative mindset. We want to have look at the person across the table to be worked with and not against. It's a pursuit of a mutually benefit outcome. And this is a quote from Chris Voss, who I follow. He is like an expert negotiator, was an expert negotiator for the CIA and the FBI, and now he works with companies. He's brilliant. Just type in the chat if you've heard of Chris Voss before, because his work is really good. So if you go in with a collaborative mindset, you're probably going to get a different outcome is if you rush in thinking, oh my God, another meeting, this person wants something from me. Like, we've met about this before, yada, yada, yada. You're really setting yourself up to not have a mutually beneficial outcome. So mindset, so you got to show up with an open mind and in good faith. Okay, don't assume, and I've done it. I've assumed that person is there out to get me and wants something else. Go in with good faith, an open mind, open heart. Show interest in what drives the other person. What's their goals? What's their motivation? What's the fear driving them? And then build trust through empathy. Acknowledge, I totally understand where you're coming from. Or it sounds like, and we'll talk about that as we get going. And then really deactivate those negative feelings and magnify the positive. So, and there's been times where I've even taken a break because I knew I wasn't in the right mindset. And I just kind of said, I'm just going to take 1 second, go to the washroom, come back, and then I can reframe myself and get into that good mindset. So
Karen, we've talked about this before. Like typically when we get bad news from a staff, our immediate reaction is to respond right away, right?
Yeah.
And something that I've done over the years is that, like, if I receive bad news, like I would, like I actually will wait 24 hours for a response, right? Yeah. Because like I don't want my emotions to say something I would regret. And it's back to this mindset, right?
Yeah, and the assumption, Tara, this is, I always think the person wants to quit or leave. When everybody, when it says, could I meet with you? What's your immediate thought? Oh my God, they want to quit. Oh my God, they want to leave.
Or they want more money.
Or they want more money, right? And that's, we're wired like that to go to the negative quickly, but we can retrain ourselves to stop that and say, hey, thanks for showing up, negativity, got it. But I'm going to actually think positive and I had good faith that they just want to have a conversation. They just want to have a conversation, right? So we can really change that. So, ask yourself, do you show up with that mindset where you're expecting the worst every time? If you do that, then you're probably going to get the worst. Or can you show up with something different? So that would be my challenge to you. The next time you have a conversation, take a moment, set yourself, take some breaths, walk around your facility, and go in with a clear mindset. It makes a big difference. I know a lot of people have done the challenge before, said that's probably the biggest game changer, was really changing the mindset.
Don't react, right?
Yeah.
Don't, right? So
yeah. Awesome. So then as we move from mindset, let's talk about listening. Who's a great listener? Just type in the chat, amazing listener, because this is a skill that a lot of people aren't that great at. We like to talk, right? But listening is a skill, but there's levels of listening. So there's ignoring, which is not listening at all. There's pretending to listen, where you're pretending to listen, but you're already formulating what you're going to say and what you're going to ask in your mind as they're speaking. There's selective, where you hear one thing and that's all you hear, and then you shut off for the rest. There's attentive, where you're actually present and you're listening, not doing anything above. And then there's empathetic, where you're listening and trying to put yourself in the other person's shoes. And really that's where we want to get to, is try and think, okay, where are they coming from? Where are their fears coming from? Getting to the bottom of, what's making them ask this question. So type into the chat, which one are you? Do you ignore, pretend, selective, or attentive, or empathetic listening? What about you, Rick?
I'm a combination of selective and empathetic.
I have to say, since I've known you, Rick, your listening has improved so much.
Yes, it has.
Yes.
And it's because of you, Karen, actually. Conversations we have, because I tend to jump in and control the conversations, but I've learned to be a better listener since I met you, Karen.
Yeah. The power is in the listening. The power is in the listening. And that's where sometimes you're uncomfortable. This is the uncomfortable. You just have to sit there and listen and be uncomfortable, because you just want to go, bleh. But you got to step back, count. No, 1, 2, just listen, listen, listen. Trust me. And that's where the power is. So listening is an event. It is. And we have this acronym, listening ladder. So you want to look at the person, listen, you're going to ask questions, don't interrupt, don't change the subject, express emotion with control, and respond appropriately. And this is, after you've done the listening. So it is an event, and it takes practice. And the best people to practice is your family, and particularly your children. I've used my children as guinea pigs for a lot of things and a lot of these skills. So it's so tough. It really is. So if we move on to after
you know what? I really like this, Karen. Something I've done more and more on my calls with my one-on-one calls is instead of me telling them what to do, right? Or telling them what's wrong, I'm spending way more time asking questions, being curious, And my opening question is actually the book that you got me reading.
Yeah.
I like to start off my weekly my one-on-one meetings with hey, what's on your mind?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Great.
Type in the chat, type in mind in the chat, you know. So I start my weekly, what's on your mind? Because when I ask this question, I want them to tell me anything that's on their mind, like outside of work, you know, because I think that's important as well, right? You know, because if they got other stuff going on, they're not going to care about the to-do list that you have to give them. That's the time you have to be a little more empathetic, right? You know, so.
Yeah. No, it's awesome. Talk less, listen more, right? And then be curious with the type of questions that you ask. So if we move, you know, next to listening, as I said, it's an event, it's a skill. After you've listened, then what do you say and how do you say it? So consistency, right? Like if you're not a great listener, it's not going to change overnight. It takes practice, consistency, keep working on it. It can be improved, as Rick said. I've noticed a big improvement in his listening since we met 6 years ago, which is awesome. Yes, silence is golden. I swear that's where the magic happens. So after you've listened, now what do you say to this person and how do you say it? And how, to me, is a lot of times much more important than what. And why do I say that? This has to do with tone. So let's talk about tone. And I'm going to use email as an example, because email is one of the worst things for communication, because people will read it with their own tone. They'll inflect their own tone on it when it wasn't meant to be read like that. So that's where email communication becomes a problem, right? Because somebody could read it with a tone. So, you know, if you take the word really, you can say it with different tone. You go, really? Which is kind of are you serious? Or you could say really, which is more curious and, hey, tell me more. Versus really, do we have to talk about this again? So just with one word, you can change your tone and flip the narrative of that word. Chris Voss is great with this. Like, I could listen to him all day long. This quote is so key. Your inner voice becomes your outer voice. So if you're in the wrong mindset and you're angry and you're pissed off, that's going to come out in your tone when you're having this conversation. So keep that in mind. Again, back to mindset. So let's look at 3 different types of tone. So basic, I don't know, it's 1-1-1, but anyway, 1, 2, 3. Assertive is that, you know, because I said so, that's what we're doing, so do it. That's assertive, right? Uptone inquisitive is very playful, very accommodating, curious, like gentle, fun. It's a little bit higher in the tone scale. And then there's this down tone and declarative. And funny, Chris calls this is midnight DJ voice. You watched that, I think, Rick, too. So yeah. It's more soothing, but it's straightforward. I understand the company has this policy and we really just need to follow the policy.
So Karen, I love these tones because it totally makes a difference on that one word, right? You know, like in these 3 scenarios, like, you know, when do you use these type of tones, right? Typically,
really, like what scenario? You should spend the majority of your time in number 2, and that's where, like, tell me more. What's on your mind? Like,
curious.
Yeah,
like,
that's where you want to spend most of your time. Occasionally, I would say rarely do I use an assertive tone. I'll use the downward and I'll say, you know, I understand. I know that, for example, if you implement something and somebody doesn't like it, you can simply say, I understand you don't like it. However, we are moving forward with this, and it's okay that you don't like it. Starting Monday, this will be the policy. You know, I'm not being assertive. At least I don't think I am. You can tell me if I sound like I am, but my tone is down. I'm just declaring. That's it.
That's interesting, because I think most people, you know, and I think about my 30-year-old, like my 30-year-old like self, right? Like I was very assertive, right? Like, I'm the boss, you know, I pay you, right? Get your stuff done, right?
Yeah.
But if that makes, if you were like that before, type in boss in the chat, you know, right? Type in boss in the chat, like, hey, like, I'm your boss, I pay you, you know, like, get your stuff done. You know, what do you mean you don't get it done, right? You know,
right.
And I think over the years, I've turned into like more of a coach versus a boss. And then that requires like number 2 and 3, you know?
Yeah, yeah. And there's a fine line between when it turns from kind of declarative to assertive, right? So I think that you can get what you want being declarative versus like, do what I say, I'm your boss, just do it. Like, I don't know anybody who, well, maybe there are some people that respond well to that, but I would say not most.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, yeah.
I agree.
So tone is key for sure. And then what do you say? So here's where we get to questions. And this is my favorite part, is coming up with so many different questions to get what you want, right? And usually the ones that work the best are the ones that start with how and what, with the occasional why. And why do I say be careful with why? What do you think, Rick?
People type in the chat. Type in the chat. Why wouldn't you want to use why, right? So my thoughts about why is why usually makes the other person feel like they did something wrong, you know?
Yes.
Like, why did you do this? You know, like why? Like, why did you mess up?
Yeah, like when you're a kid, right? It takes them back to being a child. Like, why did you do that? Why did you take a cookie? I told you not to before supper. Why did you do that? Right?
Yes.
So that's
exactly. I love what's in the chat. It's accusatory, makes other person defensive, you know? So yeah, like this is a good one. Like I like swap why with how and what, you know, which is more, that's more curious now versus assertive. Assertive is actually why when you think about it, right?
That's right. That's right. And the interesting thing, if you use how and what questions, you can actually get to the why and the reason under the why without asking why.
Yeah. So type in the chat, what would be a good like what question, you know, right? What or how question, you know, and then I think Karen's going to share some opening questions. Some opening question. What would be a good like how and what question to replace your why question, you know? What's on your mind? What makes you feel this? What are your thoughts, Karen? Like, what do you think about these what questions?
I love it. You know, if you think about it, lots of times we would have said, why are you thinking that way? Or why are you doing this? But just replace it and it changes the whole thing.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So these are some examples. There's so many you can make that, you know, and I think when we're asking questions, I actually ask them to myself before. I ask myself questions before going into a meeting. I ask, what would I like to see happen? Okay, what is my ideal outcome? What is the worst case scenario? Okay, they're going to quit. That's the worst that I think. And what's the best? They're not going to quit. Maybe they just want to change their hours. Maybe, you know. And then what's a middle ground where I'd be happy with? I actually ask these 5 questions myself all the time when having conversations. So you want to begin with those questions to yourself, and they're all what's. And then you also want to ask those to the person you're meeting with, right? So they present something, you know, what are you hoping to happen out of this meeting? Well, I want this. Okay. What would be your ideal outcome? Well, if I could switch my hours from 11 to 7 to 7 to 11. Okay. So, and what would be the worst case scenario outcome out of this? Well, you said no. Okay. What would be the best? You said yes. And what would you be happy with? I don't know, like somewhere in the middle. Okay. Now let's have a conversation. Right. So it really sets you up well when you kind of define that. I find, and they're all what questions, right? I mean, you could say how as well. I'm going to give a few more examples of questions, but.
And just before you jump into that, what I love about this, Karen, and this is something I've learned over like managing people and leading people, is that people respond better when they come up with their own solution, right? Mm-hmm. So if you could ask the right questions on your like weekly one-on-ones so that they feel like they are part of the decision-making process, it will actually yield a higher outcome, you know, right? Yeah. Would you, if that makes sense, type in buy-in in the chat, Karen, what's your thoughts about getting staff buy-in this way? Is getting them to like come up with like the outcome, you know, but
you'll have much greater buy-in and engagement if they come up with the solution, because then they did it. And the beauty of it too is like, then when it doesn't work, well, you came up with this. You decided on this.
Yeah.
Oh,
You told me this is the middle. You told me that this is the best option that we're going to move forward, right? You know, what do you mean?
Yeah. And the reason I like these things to ask these type of questions too, because a lot of time, we have staff, they just want to complain, right? They just actually don't want to change it. They just want to complain. So if you ask these and they can't answer, awesome. Once you take these 5 questions, go away, come back with answers, and then let's have a discussion. Oh,
yeah.
And then sometimes they don't come back.
Yeah.
Because
and that's
they don't.
okay too. Right?
That's okay too.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And I'm going to add one here. One of the ones I really like too is that because I don't want to come up with the answer. Like, I would ask them like, what options do we have? What are 2 options? What are 2 options that we have?
Right. Yeah.
And they can say option 1, option 2. Oh, great. Which option are you leaning more towards?
You're stealing my thunder here, Rick.
Oh, am I? Oh, sorry. I never looked at your slides. Okay, anyway, go.
Okay,
Sorry.
carry on. Okay, let's carry on. And what are some response? So if somebody answers you, we can have a variety of response. So these are the same questions you're going to ask your staff member, and then how do you respond? And you respond with more questions. You just get more curious. So I listed a few examples of some responses that you can use, and we can see in the next slide. Awesome.
Oops.
So
yeah.
So this is where you get curious, and this is the fun part. So in what way would that help you? Or things like, it seems like you're really unhappy with this. Is that correct? Yes. Or it looks like, or it sounds like. Even just saying, how so? Tell me more. Can you give me an example? And this one I like too. That word has so many different meanings. What does it mean to you? I actually use this now when I ask, do you want to work part-time or full-time? And they say part-time. That word has so many different meanings. What does that mean to you? My definition of part-time and your part-time definition might be different. So these are just more curious questions to get responses to really find out what this is all about. And then if we put it all together in a sequence, how does this flow? And this is really has to do with human relation principles. And this is from Dale Carnegie, which I did a leadership course on this, which was really great. And so again, you're just kind of flowing through these HR principles, even though we're not HR specialists, utilizing the concepts that we laid above. And this is kind of how it can flow. So first of all, we're showing up with the right mindset. So we want to respect the other person's opinion, never say, you're wrong, that's not right, you're wrong, right? Otherwise, they're going to be on defensive right away, and it's game over, okay? If you are wrong as an owner, and I've done this, where I've messed up, quickly admit it and say, you know what, I dropped the ball here. I take ownership, this fell apart, I was in the wrong. And then you're going to begin in a friendly way. That's the other thing, is that instead of just saying, what do you want to meet about? You call me, how are you? How's it going? How are your kids? Because then they could just relax. Oh, my dog's barking. They're going to relax.
What's the dog doing, right?
and the defenses are going to come down, right? And it makes a better environment for communicating.
Yeah. I think this is key. Like, I always like to start these meetings I have where I talk about something personal first, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to check in on their life, check in on their family, their relationship.
Yeah.
Maybe like a check in on a conversation we had last time that was personal. It could be that boating trip, it could be that yoga class, or it could be that retreat, and just to get it going, right? So
yeah. And then define the purpose of the conversation. If you called the meeting, then define it. The reason that I wanted to meet with you was this, or the purpose of this meeting is this. And then I always like to start with, I want you to know, like, you have done an amazing job at running the front desk. You've been an amazing mentor to the physios. Your input in this area is super, super important. And then if it's something specific, I like to get agreement. So would you agree that as a company, we decided on this policy? Would you agree with that? Yes. Okay, so then you've got agreement right away. So you're already a step ahead because you've got agreement from the other person. Sorry, I might have to go let my dog out.
Okay. Yeah.
Sorry, or else she's gonna keep barking.
Okay, that's okay. So yeah, I think Karen brings up a good point. Is you know, you want them to be able to you want them to be able to like agree with you, you know, and so I think that that's a good opening way of starting this. So
Sorry for the dog commercial
that's
interruption
okay.
there.
Yeah.
And then you let the other person do a great deal of the talking. And the way you do that is by asking questions and let them talk. Ask question, listen, let them talk. And then when you get to the point where, okay, we got to come up with a solution. And I always like to say, and again, it's putting it back on them. In what ways can we resolve this? Or what ideas do you have? Or what solutions do you have that would help with the situation, this issue, or would help resolve this? So you ask them that question. And then this is where hopefully they come with their ideas. And I put this quote in here: one will be more supportive of an environment that they have helped create. So if they can help create the solution to the problem, they're more likely to be engaged and buy in. So I'm not coming up with the solution, they are.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. You know, so
just type into the chat solution if you agree that them coming up with the solution or together combined is a much better outcome than you just telling them what the solution is.
yeah, and if I was to share a quick example, is that like, you know, like my daughter loves eating like vegetables, and over the years I got her to eat vegetables because I actually make her part of that decision-making process, right? You know, so we will go to the grocery store and I would ask her, hey Kylie, what do you want to have for dinner tonight? Do you want kale or do you want broccoli? You know, right? And then like and then we will go home and we will cook the meal together, right? And then when we have dinner, she's actually eating because she's part of the decision-making process. So my daughter actually is a weird child that she actually eats broccoli for breakfast.
Yeah, and I see the comment, but they don't know all the factors in coming up with that solution. That's true. So then you can say things like, have you considered this? Might we consider this because of this? Or I think that's awesome. The one thing you may not know is that we do have to look at this aspect. Oh, okay. How do you think that aspect would also? So you're again just asking more questions to fill in the solution and the outcome that you want, but they're coming up with it. That's where the magic is, that they're coming up with what you want. You're just helping them get there. So once they come up with the idea, congratulate. Awesome. I love that idea. That's great. How does that sound to you? More questions. Are you happy about that? Again, if it's difficult, see things from their other perspective. Dramatize their ideas. Great idea. I like that. And then throw down a challenge. Cool. Let's do that for the next month and see how it goes. I'll check in with you next week via email, Slack, FaceTime, however you want to do. And let's see how, and this is the piece that's missing sometimes in the accountability. And we go a lot into this in the challenge, is we say great idea, but then we never follow up. Right. So having a little check-in in place ensures them that you're going to actually follow up.
Type in the chat, that makes sense. Type in like weekly check-in in the chat, right? So once you say it's a great idea, do a weekly check-in to follow up on that behavior or that task or that thing that you want them to do. Okay.
Yeah. And then finally, I always like to finish by saying, are you happy with this decision? Are you happy with our decision? Yes or no? How do you feel now as compared to prior to our meeting? Oh, I feel better. I feel worse. Okay. If they feel worse, then you're not done. You didn't get to the bottom of that, or they're not happy. Because if they're not and they go away, guess what? You're going to have this problem again. Right. And then you can also go back. You told me you were happy with this, with the solution. Do you want to change it? Do you want to modify it? Yes, it's not working. Okay, well, let's go back to the drawing table. Right. Type in happy. Type in happy if that's a question you're going to start using when you finish your meetings. Are you happy with this meeting? Are you happy with the decision?
I love this word. Are you happy with our decision? Right. So it's not my decision. It's not your decision. It's our decision. But it was really their decision because they came up with it.
That's right. And again, that's that exchange. It's a collaborative working relationship versus a dictatorship. Yeah, and then now here's the caveat. What if they don't have any ideas or suggestion? I don't know, you're the boss, you tell me. Always, this is the golden nugget, always come prepared with 2 or 3 ideas or solutions of your own. And then it goes like this. Okay, cool. I've got 3 solutions. I'm going to tell them to you. I want you to pick one. That's it. And then you sit and you let them think and you be uncomfortable. Otherwise, if you don't do that, this meeting is not finished. There's no solution. And then you're going to have another meeting about the meeting that didn't have a solution, right? If they want to say, I have to think about it, awesome. Think about it. Get back to me in 48 hours. So always come prepared. And I think this is why we don't like meeting, is because we feel we're not prepared. Like, what if they don't have a solution? What if they don't know what it is? Then what? Well, then come prepared with what you want. If they're not going to say it, then you say it and they pick it. But again, it's them picking it and you know, and you agreeing on it.
Give them an option, right?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of pressure off when you come prepared. So, and that's the other key, is come prepared to your meetings.
Yeah, this is good. There's a couple of things. There's a couple of questions in the chat. I thought we could answer that as well.
Sure.
We're willing this topic. So Brian said, at what point, Karen, at what point do you do what's best for the business versus making the employee like happy or comfortable, right? You know, what's the tipping point, right?
That's a great question. I think you can, and you do have to say that. And that's where you can acknowledge where they're coming from. I know where you're coming from. Unfortunately, I have to make this decision with my business hat on, my owner hat on. I know you won't like it, and that's okay. You don't have to like it. I've heard what you've said, and I'm certainly considering that, but I've had to make this decision that's, you know, best for the business right now. So you acknowledge, empathize, say it's okay if you don't like it or you're not happy, that's okay. And then you explain the rationale. And that's what I've done. That seems to work. And most people are like, I don't like it, but they get it.
Well, if you found that script helpful, type in helpful in the chat. If you found that helpful. If you found that script that Karen just gave you, find helpful in the script, because I think it's very difficult to say this, right? But if you could pull this off, like, I think it's very powerful, right?
It is, because they want to be seen and heard and acknowledged and validated. You do all those things, that will make them happy, and it'll be easier for them to hear that you've decided to make this decision instead, but you heard them.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's so cool. And there's another comment here by Carl, right? And it's relating to like letting them fail, you know, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm a big fan of this. And Karen, I want to hear what your thoughts is. That like sometimes, like, you know, like your leaders and the people in your team, you know, you have to let them fail, right? You know. And you just got to make sure that, like, you just got to manage like the risk, so it's not expensive failure, right?
That's right.
And part of that journey is if they fail and they rise back up and you bring them back up, they will actually respond better in the future. And that's something I've learned over the years with letting like my leaders fail. You know, but I want to manage that failure. If that makes sense, type in failure in the chat. And Karen, I want to hear your thoughts on that, on failure.
I 100% agree, I think, and that's, you know, I wouldn't have got to where I've got without failing. It wasn't all the things that I did, you know, it was a lot of things I did right, but it was more the stuff I did wrong and I learned from. I think failure is the best way to learn if you use that as a learning opportunity to empower and to grow that individual. If you do that, I think the sky's the limit. And I think giving permission when you are delegating or doing, you know, to people, say, it's okay if you fail, no problem, we can work it out. You know, again, the risk, you have to evaluate the risk. If this is a $20,000 failure, that's bigger than a $200 failure, right? Yeah. So you do have to do that, but give them the permission. It's okay, you can fail, I failed, I fail every day.
Yeah, it's so important, because I think our job as like coaches versus bosses is be able to like develop our leaders to be the best version of themselves, which actually includes them making their own decisions. And part of them making their own decisions is kind of going through the same journey that we went through as owners, which is by failing. We just, as owners, we got to manage their failures so that they don't blow up the business, but it's okay for them to fail. Right. You know, I think that is really, really important, you know, is letting them fail. A lot of times, like my leaders will fail. I know they're going to fail because I want to meet with them next week again saying, hey, how did it go? What's your biggest takeaway? What do you do differently next time? They're like, okay, this is great, you know. So we're training them. So
the biggest obstacle to that is us. We have to let go of the vine and be okay with letting them fail versus rushing in and just doing it ourselves. Forget it. I'll just do it myself. No, like there's no learning there.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. That's awesome. Let's there's no question, so we'll end it here. Everyone, have yourself an amazing week, and we'll see you on the next episode of New Patient Secrets. And once again, Karen, thank you for sharing your wisdom and kind of your secrets. And it's amazing to actually share what you do and impact as many people as we can inside the community. So
thank you very much for hosting the webinar.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Thanks so much for coming.